Hey wrestling fans, welcome to another episode of 360 Wrestling Fanatic for Saturday, August 14th, 2019, episode 262. As always, I am your host, Lance Brock. Thank you for tuning in once again. And on today's episode, going to be recapping last night's WWE Smackdown and the debut episode of AEW Rampage. Hopefully everybody tuned in to both shows last night, as we're going to have 3 hours of pro wrestling every Friday night. And next Friday is even more. Not only Smackdown and Rampage, but we also have Impact Wrestling on Impact Plus, their special emergence. So that will definitely be a jammed-packed night of pro wrestling action. And now we know what the main event is going to be for Emergence, but I will get to that in just a little bit as I recap both shows from last night. But unfortunately, it seems like this has been happening almost every other episode. I have to start off with some sad news. The passing of Dominic DeNucci, and 89 years old, and very sad news for the pro wrestling world. And let's start off with last night's WWE Smackdown. And first, we have John Cena in the ring to cut a promo. And he is interrupted by Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman. And they have a face-off. And they go back and forth with each other with insults on the mic. Excuse me. Our first match of the evening is for the Intercontinental Championship. Shinsuke Nakamura, or King Nakamura as they're calling him now, challenging Apollo Crews, and Boogs and Aziz are both kicked out, ejected from ringside. And Nakamura wins this to capture the Intercontinental Championship once again. Tag team action next on SmackDown. The Street Profits defeat the Alpha Academy. Now we get a promo from Seth Rollins, and we get a video from Rollins showing the history and careers of Seth Rollins and Edge. We got another tag team match up next. The Mysterios taking on the Dirty Dogs, Robert Roode and Dolph Ziggler. The Usos have a distraction on the screen, but the Mysterios still pick up the win, defeating the Dirty Dogs. And then Baron Corbin comes out and says he might have to declare bankruptcy, and he has a credit card thing on his phone, and he asks everyone to donate a minimum of $1,000. Then we see Kevin Owens And he says he'll give Corbin $1,000 if he can beat him in a match. If Owens wins, though, then Corbin has to stop begging the WWE Universe for money. Owens wins this one. And then backstage, we see Baron Corbin, and then he steals the Money in the Bank briefcase from Big E. I could see this maybe leading to something where maybe Corbin challenges him to a match where the briefcase is on the line. And then we have a contract signing for the Smackdown Women's Championship match. Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair. And Banks brings out two witnesses, Carmella and Zelina Vega. And then they attack Bianca 3-on-1. And Banks gets the bank statement on the table onto Bianca Belair. And that was WWE Friday Night Smackdown for last night. I thought it was an okay show. Nothing too bad on it. It was decent. Which unfortunately, here in Detroit, I turn on Fox, and then there's a Lions game on, and they weren't going to show it till 11:30, so I had to go online and watch it to see it live here in Detroit. Because of the Lions, it's all their fault. And next up, the debut episode of AEW Rampage, live from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And our commentators, Excalibur, Taz, Chris Jericho, and the world's strongest man, Mark Henry. And the show starts off with a match for the Impact Wrestling World Championship. Christian Cage taking on Kenny Omega. And the crowd was definitely not only hot for this match, but the whole show. Just like they were on Dynamite last Wednesday. This Pittsburgh crowd was super into the show. And you could tell they were happy and excited to be there. Now this match, really good match. The finish sees Kenny Omega try for a one-winged angel onto a chair, but Cage counters and hits the kill switch on the chair for the win to become the new Impact Wrestling World Champion. As we see the Jurassic Express, come out to the ring, celebrate with Christian Cage and Impact executive Scott D'Amore. And then backstage, Mark Henry is with Christian Cage for an interview. And then in the back, we also see Orange Cassidy just kind of standing around. I don't know if that's to maybe set something up in the future for maybe a potential challenger for that championship or not. Who knows? It could be. We could see Christian Cage versus Orange Cassidy in the future for the Impact World Championship. Speaking of the Impact World Championship, next Friday, Impact Plus, Impact Wrestling Emergence. Now we know that Christian Cage will be defending the Impact World Championship against the winner of the Battle Royal from Impact Wrestling last Thursday night. Brian Myers, the most professional wrestler. So you won't want to miss that. And next up, the AEW TNT Championship is on the line now, as we have Fuego del Sol taking on Miro. If Del Sol is able to pick up the win here, he will get an AEW contract. This one was kind of a short match, but it was very entertaining though. It may have been short, but this was still quite an exciting match, to be honest. But it is Miro picking up the submission win with the game over. Then we see Del Sol in the ring looking down after losing the match. And then we see Tony Khan along with Sammy Guevara make their way to the stage. Khan hands Guevara something, and then he goes to the back. Guevara goes in the ring, and he says to his best friend, sometimes there is victory in defeat, as he hands Fuego del Sol a AEW contract, and he tells him that he is all elite. And then we see a face-to-face interview Mark Henry backstage is with Dr. Britt Baker and Red Velvet. Now for this one, it wasn't a surprise at all, but these two shows in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, or for these two shows, Pittsburgh, I should say, the hometown of Britt Baker, she was probably one of, if not the most, over baby faces in the whole show. And unfortunately, Red Velvet, who is usually a baby face, was one of the most heels on the show. And it is now time for the main event of the first ever episode of Rampage for the AEW Women's Championship. Red Velvet versus Dr. Britt Baker, DMD. Really good match here. Britt Baker selling the bad hand. One point goes for the lockjaw, but she's not able to because of the bad hand. And then at one point, Red Velvet, she even tried to do the lockjaw on Britt Baker, but Britt Baker ended up getting it in and using the other hand to do it. Red Velvet taps out, and still AEW Women's World Champion in her hometown of Pittsburgh, but it should have been renamed Pittsburgh last night. Got a huge pop from the crowd. Big celebration in the ring. And then Chris Statlander gets in the ring, and then we see somebody come out to aid Britt Baker, and it is Jamie Hayter. It has been a couple years since we have seen her in All Elite Wrestling, but Jamie Hayter is now back in AEW, and we found out today that she is now all